Some good answers here. In truth, being spiritually awake is equivalent to knowing yourself to be the living God. On one hand, it is devastating because you have lost everything except for your awareness, your own consciousness. On the other hand, it is liberating because your consciousness is actually infinite, or rather, approaching infinity, as infinity by definition has no end. There is a story about a saint, I think it was Ramakrishna, but he told his wife the day he refused his meal, he would have only 3 days left to live. This is because, as an enlightened saint, with no attachments to physical reality, he was consciously savoring his food and using it as a tool in a divine pastime. I think the story goes he spent something like 10 years more eating his meal every day with great enthusiasm. It was one of the most pure joys he possessed and he really did enjoy it. But as an enlightened being, you always seem to have that, Jesus Christ, look in your eye. Not that you have been sentenced to certain death by the God whom you devoted everything of yourself for, but actually that everyone has been sentenced to certain death. In Jesus' back pocket he keeps with him the fact that life is a divine gift, and truthfully, any person can become a yogi and learn to master the physical art of living and thereby physically live forever or for 1,000 years or more. Christ even promised to return from death to reign for 1,000 years. So this is a sign that he was aware of the great gift of life and its potential for everyone as a relief from death, not any less true than death. So this great lifeness of life is always a reason for celebration and joy. We should be feeling that Christ has conquered existence once and for all. This is joy beyond the boundary of human conception. But there is the fact of death. And it is good reason for sorrow, for all beings, especially Jesus and Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna didn't allow his impending death to overshadow his joyous times with his wife. But then came that fateful day that, just like he had promised, Ramakrishna refused his meal for the first time. His wife immediately recognized the sign and became overshadowed by his death. 3 days later he left his body just like he said he would. Now there is nothing inherently sorrowful or shameful about death, and it should in fact be celebrated as the great Mahasamadhi, a return to heaven to sit alongside Christ and God in the kingdom. So my point is that enlightenment is simply becoming aware of this window in which our soul crosses over to the afterlife. This window, or doorway, is always open. And there is good reason for sorrow. There is good reason for sorrow. It is like saying goodbye. But in truth, and the way enlightened beings handle their self, spiritual awakeness and enlightenment as a source of unending bliss and energy. An enlightened being often dwells for hours in a state of samadhi which is like conscious rest. Being so well rested, this being has boundless energy to create and to fully live. One would think being spiritually awakened and spiritually depressed are polar opposites and not possible, but you can experience both. In our awakening we find our awareness deep within our heart. Here there is a vastness, borderless, a peace beyond words experience. We find everyone and everything are intimately connected. Many people think once you have an awakening experience, you're forever changed. Yes, you are forever changed, but we still have a personality. We still live in a realm of mental conflict, competition, selfishness, and self-identification. Even though our awakening tells us there is no self, our awareness has a pattern of lots and lots of self which pulls us from this inner vastness, eternal love and understanding. To know our true home in our heart, who we really are and live in the world around us can lead to spiritual depression. This is why through history, in all traditions, people have a spiritual practice to stay in contact with our true beingness, community, and practice service to be free and offering in this world. As we continue to offer our true nature, our awareness of all that is being offering from within us and the heart of life, grows and grows. The opposite. The ego perceives it would be a loss of control, a sacrifice of some sort, and boring. Therefore, the fear of change translates into, oh, this will be depressing. In fact, one could perhaps enter into it half-heartedly and become depressed, but you can hardly blame the chasm for the jumper's decision to try crossing it in 2 leaps. One has to consider, there will be an initial fear. That is the entire point of awakening, getting past the fear manufacturer which is the ego. There will be change, but it is desired change. The reason the alcoholic chooses not to truly quit drinking is the fear of not drinking, the fear of sobriety and its normalcy and accompanying responsibility. But, when looked upon soberly, perhaps from the future, the sober man is joyful for not being unreliable, unhappy and for no longer hurting people, for not endangering job, health, love life, security, relationships. He would say he sacrificed nothing because he never wanted to be drunk. But, the ego says, we cannot quit drinking, I always enjoy the first 30 minutes. It is neither depressing nor sacrifice to commit to perceiving clearly, being self-honest, valuing truth, loving others, having certainty, being trustful and being trusted, getting joy from giving and serving, being loved in return. But, the ego would tell you, but I am good at judgment, those others cannot be trusted, I enjoy those 30 seconds of endorphins when I get angry and when I hurt others, only my justice has validity. The ego is wrong, it cannot be said that you are giving up, that which you never truly wanted.